my first question here is literally this. Tell me everything.
Oh my God!
Just tell me the whole thing. Now,
Okay.
Why don't we start with this? I think our listeners. I mean, this is the probably the most fun podcast we've done. This episode is just fascinating, and it's even more fascinating today in a world where we now have the ability to move anywhere, not just in retirement, but well before retirement. My very first podcast for Retire Sooner was with David Bach from Automatic Millionaire. And the reason I interviewed him was that he had this a couple of years ago. I was in New York with him pre-COVID, and he said, I think I'm going to go to Italy. I'm going to go to Florence for, he goes for a year. I was like, you're not going to go literally for a year. And I thought he was just saying for a long time, like a couple of months. And 3 months into his trip, I was texting and I'm like, are you still there? He's like, still there.
Wow.
And 9 months in, still there. And then COVID hit and he actually kind of got stuck there a little bit. But
yeah,
he's still there. He's still there years later. And he did this well before retirement. But now the cover of one of the most recent Barron's articles it had Billings, Montana on the cover, or maybe it was Boise, Idaho, because we've been talking about all these small towns in the United States that people are flocking to because we have more ability than ever to work from anywhere. Now, you guys are obviously talking about where we're going to live in retirement, and you're still trying, I guess, to pick a place. But the concept here today is first of all, I'd love for you to tell our audience what gave you this idea to explore the world and share it on podcasts. Hey, sell me on wherever you live, literally from Costa Rica to these exotically amazing places that sound amazing, like Santiago de what is it? Santiago de what?
Querétaro.
Santiago de Querétaro, Mexico, Sicily, Vancouver, Honolulu, Sevilla, Spain, all the way to, ready for it, Durham, North Carolina, Wilmington, Delaware.
Yeah.
What is another one here? Fletch, North Carolina, or is that New Jersey?
Fletcher,
North Carolina.
Fletcher, North Carolina. Yeah. Come on down. So you have, I would say, the exotic all the way to just, hey, maybe Wilmington's a place that is cooler than people might think. So let's maybe start there, is that I'd love for you to share how you thought, first of all, this idea of let's explore this, number one, and number two, the thought of, hey, let's turn this thing into a podcast.
Okay. So first I want to mention, we want to thank you for having us. It's an honor to be on your show and to say that our podcast is one of the most fun. We are super honored, whether you say it to all your guests or not.
Well, also, I said this in the beginning of the episode, so it remains to be seen. Okay. So we have to make sure it's fun.
Okay. So how this started...
So have a glass of wine, by the way, while you're doing this.
Oh, okay. Gene, go get that.
Like the guys that drink beer we heard in your show,
So basically, first I should mention also that we married in Florence. We eloped and married in Florence. So we can see spending, a year there, but not much more. Because I think you can walk all of Florence like you could walk all of Boston. It's about the same size to me. So we want to move in a few years. And we want to leave New York City. We think that the weather would be better. And we just want to see more green and make our lives more pleasant, if you will. It's so chaotic where we are. So,
and by the way, when you say New York, are you in the city of New York? Or where in New York really are you?
We are in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, New York. So we are near the Verrazano Bridge. We could see it from our windows.
We're Brooklynites, yes.
We're Brooklynites,
yes. So you're in the city.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. Okay. So we decided that, if we're going to think about moving, we need to go see some of these places ourselves. So back in early 2020, in February, we took a trip to Winter Park, Florida. Beautiful, we wanted something similar to where we are, and it was nice, but it really wasn't for us. And so we said, all right, let's go home and let's pick another place, and we were going to go to Asheville, North Carolina. But then COVID hit. So that kind of stopped, everything. And Gene came up with the idea of, why don't we launch a podcast where we can interview retirees about their adopted cities? And I said, that sounds amazing, because when I drove to work every day, my commute would consist of a 45-minute ride, and I would listen to podcasts. And I was so into it that I said this would be a great idea.
Maybe, what are the factors that your guests from all of these places, what do they typically cite? What is important to the people moving to these places or living in these places?
I would say it really varies, because some people have a lot of wealth and some of our guests don't. And it's funny, the ones on the low end, a lot of them tend to be the ones that go overseas, because they can live for a lot less money. Health care is a lot cheaper. And there's a woman who moved from when she was 55, so she's fairly young, moved from Southern California to Mexico. She lives a half block from the beach. She surfs almost every day, and she pays $420 a month for rent. Now she lives on Social Security, and she's a writer, so she gets a small amount of money from her books.
Yeah.
But that's it.
As an author, I can confirm, small amount of money. All right. So what town was that? What episode was that, guys?
That was Mazatlan,
Mexico.
Yeah, and I have to say, she's not living in some kind of measly. I mean, she's living in a nice 2-bedroom condo, and she was featured on an episode of CNBC, and her place is beautiful. So you wouldn't think that $450 could buy you that, but it can.
It's $420. And she says people in Mazatlan, if she tells them she pays that much, they think she's rich.
Right, because many don't
Mexicans,
pay that much.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go dive into that location, because again, I love to romanticize this. I told David Bach, as much as I love what he did, I don't think I'll ever do it. I love to think about picking up and moving to one of these cities. And I lived in Seville. I lived in Sevilla for 6 months in college. I did study abroad there, and it's an incredible place, right?
Yeah.
But I'm so ingrained in America and love. I don't know what it is. I just love being here. I can't see myself living. I can see myself visiting a lot of these places, but going for a year or two like David Bach did is amazing. I love to think about it. And I love to actually talk about it and contemplate it with it. And I'll ask Lynn about it. I'll say, hey, what do you think about going to Phoenix, Florence for a year?
Yeah.
Actually, I'd like to go to Phoenix for a year. To a lot of places I'd love to go. But I guess to some extent I'm a visitor at this point, and I don't want to move anywhere, because I love Atlanta, because it's such a good. Atlanta to me is such a wonderful compromise in a good way.
Yeah.
It has so many different things that make it a wonderful city.
Yeah.
And it was just every time I come back from New York or Miami, and I've had to travel a lot in the last year, or even great places like Austin or Denver, Ann Arbor, Michigan, Philadelphia, and outside of Philly. Every time I come back to Atlanta, I literally look at the skyline as I drive back into the city, and I think, wow, this is the best place. But let me go back. Let me go back to this woman who is in. Is it Mazatlan? What is it? How do you pronounce
Mazatlan? Mazatlan, yeah.
Mazatlan. So is it the romantic picture of what we think? Like I'm going to a place, it's near the beach, it's a great little town. What is it like there? And how did she make the call to do that?
Well, it's a city. It's a nice city. What happened was she was a newspaper writer in Southern California, and the internet came along, and basically she lost her job. I think her youngest child was 18. She talked to him. He was okay with her leaving. She was a single mom. She didn't have a lot of money, and she visited Mazatlan and just fell in love with it. And she moved down there.
She had gone several times.
Yeah,
when she was married, she even went.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, she moved down there, and she had the idea of starting a local entertainment newspapers, like New York Magazine type of thing. And she did it. She did it for a few years, but it was a lot of work. And I think that's how she got to know a lot of people. And now she's, well known in the area. And yeah, she loves it. She loves surfing. She loves hanging out with her friends.
How old is this woman?
She's probably around mid 60s now, 65. But she was 55 when she first moved there.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we give her, what's her name, by the way?
Her name is Janet.
Blazer.
Janet Blazer.
So Janet is 60 and she's surfing?
Yeah.
65 at least. 65.
And she's
I believe.
surfing.
Yeah, she's in great shape. Yeah.
You can follow her on Instagram.
Yeah.
She's
That's
on
amazing.
a surfboard,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Is this a town where there's a lot of other Americans and expats that live there, or is she very much just in the culture of Mexico?
There are a lot of expats, but she has learned the language. I don't know if she speaks perfectly. She has learned the language, and she has a lot of friends who are Mexicans, but she also has a lot of expat friends.
Yeah.
But she's not one of these people who just hangs out with expats, as a lot do.
I don't think it's as popular as some of the other Mexican locales.
Right.
Which is what gives it its charm as well. But
As soon as
she
it
can
gets
have
ultra popular, then it loses the charm maybe a little
kind
bit.
of like Asheville,
Yeah.
like a lot of people aren't going to Asheville now because the malls have popped up and it just seems like a place where you want to avoid.
But Mazatlan's a place where she pays $420 a month, two blocks from half block from the beach. But you can pay, $4,000 a month for a beautiful penthouse.
Yeah.
There, it really ranges.
I love this thought of the folks that have, let's say you've got this range of incomes or wealth, net
Oh
worth.
yeah, oh yeah.
On the lower end, you see people going a little bit more international, which is fascinating to me. I still, as long as I've done, as long as I've been in the happy retiree business, and as many families that I've worked with, it's still relatively rare where somebody goes internationally. And I think the block on doing international is the worry of, hey, I'm getting older. One, I'm moving away from my kids. Two, I'm worried about healthcare in another country, and not that it's any better or worse, but it's just a little scarier as I get older. Those are the two big variables.
Yeah.
So tell me about those variables and maybe some places. Well, just let's talk about those variables.
Let me say this about moving away from kids. I thought so many of our guests would say, "Oh, I don't want to be away from my grandkids. I've waited all my life for grandkids." But these people, they love their grandkids, but most of them, they didn't let them stop them from moving. There's a guy who moved to Costa Rica.
Okay.
And he has 3 adult daughters. 2 months out of the year, him and his wife go back to the States, and they see those daughters. They're close. They rent some place close to them, and he claims that he spends much more quality time in those 2 months than he would if he lived a block away from them.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
And
Yeah.
he's a very interesting guy.
Tell me about this. Tell me about what's his name.
His name is Rob Evans.
Okay. So let's talk about Rob for a minute. So Rob, I've got to give these people a name. So Rob moves to Costa Rica. Tell me about this one. So this is why your show's so fascinating, because it's kind of every single story I want to know about. Like, why did Rob move to Costa Rica? Maybe I want to move to Costa Rica.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Rob was one of our earlier international guests, and Rob was an engineer from IBM, and his wife is a teacher, or was a teacher, and very into the numbers. Rob pretty much figured out that he retired before 65. So
I think he was in his 50s, yeah.
He was in his 50s, and he realized, hey, you know what? I can't stay in my own country because I can't afford health care because IBM was paying for everything. So let's move somewhere.
Yeah, but they weren't paying after he...
Oh,
Right,
because
they
he
weren't gonna
retired
pay
early.
him.
He
Right.
had, let's say he was 55. He had a decade to get to Medicare. So he had 10 years of expensive health care. And
It was before Obamacare, so I don't know how much that would have figured into it.
So he did a lot of research, and like us, Rob has his spreadsheet. He's got all these factors, and he's very popular on those Facebook pages. And he's responsible for getting us some guests because he really believes in what we're doing, and we do him. So he found Costa Rica, and what was really interesting at one point was, he sent his wife down there without him. And he made sure that she had someone to, get the paperwork done, get her acclimated.
But he sent her down there for 3 months,
Yeah.
living with a woman who wrote a book on Costa Rica.
Right.
And he paid this woman to take her everywhere
Yeah.
and make sure she had a good time because he
Yeah.
really
But
wanted
this is
to
a
move there.
whole new marital retirement strategy. I'm paying for you to leave for 3 months. I'm paying for you to have a
Yep.
friend for 3 months.
Yes.
Just to check out this place. So she gets home, and Rob
Yeah.
says to her, all right, great. I need you to check out another place for 3 months. What's Rob doing back in the States? I'm just kidding. Keep going.
That's not what happened. What happened was she said,
Yeah,
let's pack
yeah.
our bags, let's go.
Yeah,
And what they
she
did
fell
was
in love with Costa Rica.
they sold their house.
yeah.
They got rid of everything they had except what could fit in a small
Wait.
storage locker.
Yeah, they kept getting smaller and smaller.
yeah.
So they sold their, 3,000
house.
square foot house. They moved into a smaller place. Then they moved into a smaller place. Ultimately, they moved all their life belongings into a storage facility. All right? And then they went to the airport. They
I think they
dumped.
had 6
Oh, they had
suitcases.
6 suitcases, and they threw out their coats because they no longer needed them. And they got on the plane and they left.
That was it.
And okay, so tell me about their little town and where they live in Costa Rica.
So they don't live in a little town. They live in a big city, the
San
capital.
Jose.
San Jose.
Yeah.
And they rent an apartment. It's dirt cheap. It's nice.
Yeah.
And they travel everywhere by bus. As a matter of fact, he's known as the bus ninja of Costa Rica. And among expats in Costa Rica, he's really well known. He has a Facebook group, and whenever somebody wants to figure out how to get somewhere by bus or train in Costa Rica, they contact him, and he'll know like that
Yeah.
how to get there.
And, you know,
he's
he's
an amazing
such-
That
guy.
in itself is an episode. The bus
Yeah.
ninja of Costa Rica, Rob Evans.
Yeah,
now,
he's
are they
so
the
nice.
family? Are Rob and his wife? Are they the ones that come back for 2 months to visit
Yes.
the daughters?
Yes.
So where do the daughters all live?
They live in 3 different places. One, I believe, lives in Canada.
Yeah.
One is on the West
LA?
Coast somewhere. I think
she's in
I
LA.
think, yeah, LA.
And the
the
other-
other one might still be in North Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah, because
that's where they're from.
they're originally from North Carolina. They're originally from the Raleigh-Durham area.
All right, and then so I go back to he does. It's interesting because my research has shown me, and this is in the new book coming out, what the happiest retirees know. One of the chapters is about family habits. I have 10 different habits, 10 categories. So one is money, one is investing, one is spending, and the other 7 are actually non-number related. Now they all have a financial tie. But family, in what is the relation to happiness when it comes to different components of family? And one of the questions I asked, and there's obviously a financial component to this because you've got to pay for where you're living, and you've got to make some decisions on how close you can be. And in this case, Rob Evans is choosing to be able to travel for a couple months, so that's not inexpensive. But one of the data points that I found in my research is that as the percentage of kids you live near, or let's call it driving distance to, the higher the levels of happiness. So it's direct relationship. The closer you live to your kids, the more your happiness levels tend to go up on average. So if you got to live at least near, but the data shows 25% of your kids. But once you're at 50% or half your kids, you have 4 kids, as long as you live by 2 of them, right? So if you're in Georgia and 2 of them live in Atlanta and the other 2 live in LA, then you have anywhere from a 2 times to 5x higher levels of happiness likelihood. These are not
Interesting.
set in stone. So there is a correlation that I found, and I've even told a story in the book where a family actually moved back. They actually did go away, far away, and they after about a year they said, it's just not right, and they ended up moving close back to their kids. So I think that is certainly a personal family decision, but I certainly have seen from a research perspective that it certainly helps increase levels of happiness. But I like this is almost like the best of both worlds.
Yeah, we actually had a guest who, and to me, part of this is culture also. And maybe because she's Hawaiian and Asian, but she and her husband retired, moved to Las Vegas, and she missed her grandkids so much. I mean, so much that she decided, no, I can't stay here. And they love Las Vegas. It was actually affordable. They found all these interesting things that we didn't know about. You know, there's a large Asian community there, and they have their own like home cooked foods, retail places, Hawaiian food. But ultimately, you know, it was just not. They were calling her, so she went back.
Yeah, what's interesting about her is, you know how they say, what's done in Las Vegas stays in Vegas? Well, she left her husband in Vegas. He didn't go back. He's still there.
Wait, so he's in Vegas. This
Yes.
is an even better story than the Rob Evans story. So she goes, they both move to Vegas. He stays
Yes.
in Vegas.
Yes.
Yeah, who moves to Vegas stays in Vegas. And she moved back to
Hawaii.
where?
Hawaii.
Honolulu. right?
Honolulu, yeah.
Wow.
To be by her grandkids.
Yeah, and she
Okay.
had to buy a new place that now she
Yeah.
has a mortgage again.
Yeah, because you know they moved to Vegas because it's so less expensive than Hawaii. Hawaii is real
Yeah.
expensive.
And now she's back. That sounds expensive, that whole endeavor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because as she says, buying the amount you buy a house for in Vegas is a down payment in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
I believe,
funny.
Of course it is. Well, let me go back to the factors, the variables that people cite. And to your point is that everybody kind of has their own way of ranking a place. Like, we love this place because. We love this place because. What do you find those top variables seem to be coming up over and over again? Or are they all different, guys?
I think there is a common thread.
There is, yeah.
You know, for many of our international guests, I would say a good majority, it was the cost. All right, we have people who we have a young couple who retired. I think
One's 38, one's 48.
Yeah, and they moved to Manta, Ecuador, and they were years ahead of 65, but they took a look at their lives and they said, and a lot of this is, COVID helped along, I guess. They said, we want to be somewhere where we can really enjoy ourselves and not be a slave to the dollar. And so we find that for the most people who move abroad, it is an impetus. Money is definitely one of the main drives, I would say.
Because money goes farther internationally than it would in a big city.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if I never have to cook a meal, that's a big deal. If I could have fresh fish every day, even brought to my house, and some of these places, the fish guys, I forget what they're called, but they'll come to your house, and then you select the fish from your doorstep. Now you can either go out.
Okay, hold on. Again, this is why this is exactly
Isn't
why I
that
wanted
wild?
to talk to you.
It's wild.
So, Gil, tell me, you mentioned the fishmonger. We're not the monger, but the fish.
Yeah.
Where's the fish guy go? What town is this? I want to go there too.
This is a small fishing village in Gilen, Mexico.
But in Chilem is another example of one of the perks is that they have fresh fish.
Yeah.
All the time.
All the time. Every day.
Inexpensive, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you have cost, big. You have, so food is obviously on the list. So food,
Yes.
Yeah.
But
right?
let me just say about housing costs. It's interesting in the United States, since many of these places where people retire to, in the last 2 years, the housing prices have gone up dramatically. Now, that's not a problem for somebody who sells their home and wants to pay cash and sells the home in New York City or Los Angeles.
Right.
But somebody who sells their home in Des Moines, they may not be able to get that home on the coast in South Carolina anymore. That ship has sailed.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
true.
so it's
You're
tough
exactly
now.
right. So have you done any, give me some coastal examples of anybody from like the South Carolina, the Georgia coast. But for our listeners, by the way, Georgia does have a coast. It doesn't look like it on the map.
Savannah, it's beautiful.
It's
Yeah, we're trying to
gorgeous.
get a guest from Savannah. So
Yeah,
if you know
anybody
of
out there
anyone,
from Savannah, call us.
call us.
So
We're dying to do.
So tell me about where have you done on the coast? Give me an example of the
Okay. So
the
we just-
southeastern coast, not in Florida.
Not in Florida. So we did
South Carolina.
We did South Carolina. What was the city?
Hilton Head, Charleston was one episode.
That's right.
And Myrtle Beach. And then we did another guy in South Carolina as well.
So tell me about somebody that it was in Hilton Heads or Charleston.
So Hilton Head, it was a couple. Your friend from high school.
Yeah. And I think it was a community
And what happened
community
with them?
living.
What happened with them was she had been divorced, and the deal was with her ex-husband that when they sold their house in Long Island, when the kids got out of high school, they would sell their house in Long Island. And so that's what she had to do. She didn't have a lot of money, so she sold it, got half of the money, and she wanted to pay cash for a house in South Carolina.
No mortgage. Wanted no mortgage. By the way, that's another
No
huge
mortgage.
statistic in my research is that happy retirees, as years to pay down mortgage goes down, or years to pay off mortgage goes down, happiness levels go up. So
Oh,
she
yeah.
sounds like a happy retiree. She has no mortgage.
So she moved down. So she flew down there right after the house closed. She didn't have any place to live. She finds a house in Sun City. She loves it. She buys it. But she actually moved in. I don't know how she did this. She moved in before it closed, and she had it painted before it closed. But
Well, they really worked. with
whatever.
her.
Anyway,
they were
she was
really
a
nice.
very nice woman. But she loves it there. They both love it there.
Okay. And did you do a Charleston episode?
Well,
All right. So Gene found an author who wrote a book. It turns out he's a financial planner, Adam Curran. He wrote a book called Retire Y'all, and
South Carolina.
South Carolina, and he's a transplant from Connecticut. He's not retired yet. He's probably around your age, younger. And he talks about why South Carolina is a great place to retire. And much of his business is advising retirees about those areas and how each area has its own personality and its own style of living.
Right. He says in Charleston, people want to live the Southern lifestyle. They want to say y'all. I can't even say it. I'm a Northern.
You're like you all.
Y'all.
It took me about 20 years to just easily say y'all, because I'm outside of Philadelphia near Lancaster County. So I grew up saying you all or you guys and
Yeah.
Wooder and then I eventually now I say it like yours. So we've got cost. We have food. You mentioned Gil. You mentioned community.
Yeah.
The community, because the community was something that was important to the woman who moved to Sun City.
I was going to mention that healthcare was certainly something that almost every guest looked into.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's talk
because
about healthcare.
yeah.
Let's start with healthcare internationally. How does that work?
Okay. So we have people who either they do one of two things. They either purchase the healthcare or they don't, and they pay out of pocket for, visits or what have you.
What do you mean they purchase healthcare? Meaning that
Okay.
in the given country?
They usually
Yes.
purchase private health care. Now, private health care in most countries outside of the United States is relatively inexpensive. The United States is the only place where private health care is just dramatically expensive.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah, and so some people pay out of pocket, but they might have catastrophic health care. So if something really bad happens, they're covered. But if they just, break their leg or something, they
And
pay
is
it
it different
themselves.
healthcare providers, Gene, in every different country, or is there a few that continue to pop up?
There are a few that continue to pop up. Don't ask me the names because I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't either. But when I say pay out of pocket, I'm sorry. It's basically, you go to a doctor's office and you pay what you and I might pay, like
$400 or $500.
$500.
They pay $80.
They'll pay 80. Sometimes they'll pay 30. It depends on what it is. Now,
In
if
the
you
country.
have a serious condition, what we have found is some of our guests have moved back to the United States, but even like a few of them, they didn't have to. It was just that psychological fear of being comforted, back home. But the healthcare in some of these countries are astronomical. I mean, in some of the places, they're probably better than the U. Well, maybe not better
Whoa,
than
you said
New York.
astronomical as in price, or you're saying the healthcare in some countries is actually really wonderful and good.
She meant wonderful
Yeah,
and good.
I mean
yes.
wonderful. Yeah, trusting, state of the art. Many of the physicians have been trained abroad. They've been trained in the United States.
Yeah, they speak English.
They speak English, or they grew up in their native country, studied abroad in the United States. or Europe, and then they went back home and practiced there.
So let's start. So these are also folks that the international ones obviously have some real sense of adventure. I mean, you've got to be fairly adventurous, I think, to go to any of these countries.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely.
What about the culture, though? Because I think about. I remember talking to David Bach about just picking up from New York City, moving across the world, and going to Italy. My thought was, what do you got to make all new friends? You got to meet all new people. Tell me about the social side of it or the cultural side. How, when your guests talk to you about that, what is that like? Are they starting over? Do they usually know a person or two?
Yeah, I would say a lot of them have done their research and they've connected with online communities, or they've been recommended by folks who have done it, so they think it's doable. So most of our guests, I would say all of them, recommend that you don't just go down there and move. Although there was one guy, Rob told us, that he just moved down there one day and it was like, why am I here? But that was a different story. But for the most part, I think people did their research, spent a good amount of time down there, anywhere from 6 months to a year or 18 months. Some immersed in the language. Most have not, but there's enough English or expats around that help them. Now, in terms of the culture, for me, so our plan, Gene and I, is to find a home in the United States, not in New York, and then travel abroad, 3 to 6 months a year, kind of like you. We want to be that visitor. And I want to move somewhere in that time frame to a place where no one's asking me, where are you from? I'll say, I'm from Brooklyn. They'll say, where are you really from? And I'll say, well, I was born in Brazil because my parents landed there. But where are you really from? I'm like, well, if you want me to say China, I can't because I've never been. Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to be somewhere where that we're comfortably accepted. I mean, we're an interracial couple, and some people may look at us a certain way, even in 2021. But
by the way, for our listeners, tell us what are your.
Yeah, so I'm Chinese American. And Gene is a mix of.
So I'm Italian, French, Scottish, English, Irish.
Yeah.
I think, Gene, I heard you say you are not Chinese.
I'm not Chinese. Yes. I'm sorry.
You listened to our episode. Yeah.
I am not Chinese, but my father's family was from Grenada and the West Indies.
Yeah, and so the two of us were quite rich in backgrounds, but. I want to be somewhere where, for once, I don't kind of have those questions, and I didn't face any of those in Hawaii. But for our guests, let me just say this though: many of them moved to these countries and they started to learn the language. Not many succeeded because, at a certain age, it's
right. When
very
you're
hard.
60 or 50, it's hard to pick up a brand new language.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah. And we know of a guy who's actually English, right? Born in London and wound up in Thailand. That was our most recent episode that was relieved. He's in Phuket, Thailand. And he started out really wanting to move to Vietnam.
Which he did. But Vietnam was just a little too kind of crazy for him. People are playing karaoke or whatever at 2 a.m. But the biggest problem was the visa problem.
Yeah.
They wouldn't. He wasn't sure whether he could stay in the country for a full year. Every year was a.
So Vietnam was difficult, but Thailand ended up being easier.
But much easier.
Much
yes.
easier.
What's this guy's name?
Richard Joynes.
Right,
Joynes
so Richard,
is Joynes.
And Richard basically, he lives on his boat. He technically has an apartment.
He has a boat
because he has to have an apartment, but he lives on his boat and he's just enjoying his life. He's around 70 years old. I think.
He's 70.
He's just having fun.
Yeah, and he retired early too.
Yeah, he retired early.
He retired early, so he's from England, but then in his 20s or so, he moved to New York City. He had a construction consulting business. And then at one point, he went to Vietnam. He loved the people. They were welcoming. They were warm. They made him feel very much accepted, embraced. And because of that visa issue, and some of it was noise.
Yes.
You want to sleep a normal hour.
Right.
It was kind of hard.
People doing karaoke at 4 o'clock in the morning.
And in the
waking them up,
streets. It's very busy in the streets. And so he moved to Phuket. And he says it's only like a 40-minute flight from Phuket to Vietnam. So he can have the best of all worlds.
Sounds fascinating. Now let's move to the United States. I read these lists constantly. Top of the list.
Oh,
this
yes,
is the top
Barron's.
small
Oh, my
town in
goodness.
America now.
Yes, yes.
Like every town's a top small town at some point.
Yes, yes.
Right? Doesn't it
Yeah.
seem the best states to do business and the best small towns?
Right.
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
I always see different ones. So it's
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of
there's
we're
so
the
many.
best small town. Well,
So
You
many.
can't bother. You have to investigate yourself.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, it's different for everybody. It's a very customized decision. But let's talk about some of those towns maybe that surprised you. That you wouldn't have thought about, that seem like pretty amazing location. Or let's just maybe talk about a couple locations in the United States that are of interest to you all.
All right. When you say surprise, here's the one that surprised me the most. We had a guest who retired to Manhattan, and I was thinking Manhattan. It's so expensive. Why are you going to retire there? Well, Manhattan, it's a great place if you have money, yes. But what he did was, him and his wife, they always want to live in Manhattan. They bought a condo near Central Park. They were able to do it because they sold the house, so they paid cash for the condo. And they're also able to do it because they did things like they got rid of their car. And for people to know, having a car in New York City is really expensive. First of all, the automobile insurance is outrageously expensive. And then most of the time, you don't want to park in the street because it's so difficult. You have to rent a lot. And renting a lot in Manhattan is, you pay more than what most people in the United States pay for rent.
Yeah. We had a guy who retired or staying in Queens, New York, and it took him 11 years to get a parking spot
Yeah,
in his
in his
condo.
building, yeah.
11 years, and he's proud.
It's tough having a car around here. But yeah, that New York City surprised me the most, and they love it. They go to
Where were
they
they
go to
from?
shows. They're originally from, aren't they from
upstate New York,
they're
from
the
Albany.
South. They lived in Albany for a while, yeah,
Right,
for a
right.
long time.
And
Yeah.
always wanted to move to the big city, and they did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are the top places on your list right now?
Depends which one of us you ask.
All right. So
All right,
for
so
me,
let's start with you, Gene. Gene, you tell me, what's your number one spot?
Okay, my number one spot is Santa Fe. The woman we
Santa
interviewed-
Fe, New
Yeah,
Mexico.
New Mexico, absolutely. It's a place where they have very interesting people who live there. It's somewhat diverse. Although Gil will tell you there's not a lot of Asians, but that may be true.
look,
but-
so long as there's a Trader Joe's, I will go anywhere where there's a Trader Joe's. No, seriously, because
there is a Trader Joe's
they
there.
place themselves in places that appreciate the diversity in food and people. It's true.
That's cool. It's interesting. Well, you
I
should
do a
come to
radius.
Atlanta. We got a lot of Trader Joe's.
Yeah,
They're scattered
I know.
all over Atlanta.
Yeah.
Okay,
love
so
Atlanta.
Santa Fe, New Mexico, which has some elevation, and it's a little, and it's drier. So the weather's probably really nice there.
Right.
I don't remember. I've been maybe through Santa Fe, but I don't remember. But it is nice.
Very nice. I mean, I'd love to live in California, but it's just so expensive.
Too expensive, yeah.
So that's out.
Okay.
And
The-
when I was younger, my dream was, and before I met Gail, I told her, when I met her, I told her, I'm moving to the Pacific Northwest. That's where I'm going. Of course, I fell in love and ended up in Brooklyn. But
Oh, what a cute
that's
couple.
But yeah, the Pacific Northwest is still on my list, I would say.
Yeah,
Even though now it's getting really hot there, and there were so many fires.
Yeah.
By
So
the way,
you're
you
right.
are, for our listeners, you guys are the quintessential beautiful American couple that started a podcast together. Happy retirees.
Nuts.
All right, so all right, Gil, tell me about what's your number one spot.
All right, you're not going to believe this. It's not as exciting as Gene's, but
Wilmington, Delaware. Let me try to guess.
No.
Wilmington.
No.
Almost.
Okay.
Almost.
Let's see here. Marietta, Georgia.
It's
That's
not on the
pretty
list.
close.
It's not on the list of somebody who retired there, so we can't. You can't
Oh, it's
count
not
it.
on your list of podcasts
No,
yet.
but if he's
So really, he
you're
got it
pretty
right
close.
because
he got it right. Yeah,
It's close to Wilmington,
So-
Delaware.
Yeah, so I come from a big family. I'm the oldest of 7, and they're all on the East Coast. So I kind of want to be on the East Coast, and what I've decided or settled, because one of my criteria is to be 30 to 45 minutes from an international airport. So I know that's a crazy criteria that comes before healthcare. So my place would be a suburb of Philadelphia.
No kidding.
Yeah, because 2 of my sisters are in Pennsylvania, and one is upstate, and the others are in Brooklyn and Queens. So
But the two in Pennsylvania are right outside of Wilmington, Delaware.
right? But I don't want to be.
What are the
that close.
towns, guys?
One is in Chadsford, and the other is in Garnet Valley.
What about anything where you find some of these folks that do move and they're either disappointed, they make a mistake on their choice, maybe some unexpected obstacles that people run into?
Oh yeah, yeah.
I would say the biggest mistake was we had a guy, he told us he moved to Clearwater, Florida. And you have to understand, Clearwater, Florida, like a lot of these places, is always on these lists of one of the best places to live. But what happened to him, he moved into a neighborhood with people who he didn't dislike, but he didn't get along with them.
They were Scientologists.
They were Scientologists because apparently Clearwater's big. It's the home of Scientology.
Again,
And
okay.
He didn't have anything against them, but they wouldn't say hello to him. And he's a really friendly guy. He wanted somebody. He wanted a real nice neighborhood where he got along with his neighbors and everything like that.
So he moved
And-
next to Tom Cruise. He couldn't talk to anybody, and it just became kind of
right.
weird for him.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Did they
yes.
try to convert him and pull him into Scientology?
Not
No, they didn't do
necessarily.
that.
They
But they just kept to themselves, and
Yeah.
he didn't like that.
and like he would say hi, but then they wouldn't say hi back, and so they're hoping to save enough, and then
To move,
to
yeah.
move. So
But now
that wasn't a good choice.
Prices of everywhere going up so much, they may have a problem.
Yeah. And so that was a very big shocker, and
But
I
again,
didn't
that's
realize.
community.
Yeah,
That is the community question,
But,
right?
But that's a whole. He didn't do his research.
He didn't do the
Right.
6 months to 12 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's a
Yeah.
huge key that I'm getting from this is that you clearly have to do a full 6 months of research
Yeah.
to figure out if the community is right and really test all of it, right? Within 6
Yep.
months, you kind of get the food, you get the adventure, you get the cost.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I think that maybe there would be a case against visiting is that when you're visiting, the socialization is, I think, a little bit different because
Oh,
you're
very.
not you're
Your
not
mindset.
rooted, and everybody you meet, you're like, well, I'm only going to be here for 2 more weeks. I'm only going to, it's like because socialization, you really have to invest some time and some
Yep.
energy and actually say yes to invitations and go and hang out and get to meet people. So I think there is a thought that if you're going to be somewhere, the upside of living there or living there for a portion of the year, you really do get more ingrained in the culture and the society.
yes,
Absolutely.
yes. Yeah, I mean, if you're not immersed and you're not accepting people outside of your expat community, right, or even in the United States, you're going to miss out. So you have to get to know your neighbors. You have to talk to people who are, whether they're when you're shopping or just that kind of socialization. Take some courses in the area. Not just move down there, but literally see what others do. And imagine yourself living there a year from now. What would you be doing?
And I think it's important to be accepting of the people there. They might not be like the people who you knew back in New York.
Right. You're a guest.
But you're a guest, and act like that, and see if you like it, see what you like, and don't just make quick judgments.
Yeah, because most of our guests, especially the ones abroad, right? Because if you're coming within the United States, no one can really be that different in terms of the culture. But the ones who moved abroad, they said there were a lot of expats who would say, why do they do things this way? Oh, that's so wrong. Or this is just not the way to live. And and ultimately, they were just miserable, and they would wind up leaving or just, and then they would say, they feel this negativity that the country they grew up in did not allow them to stay. I mean, that was their own conclusion. And so they blamed the United States for making them work their butts off and then not be able to stay. God forbid they retire before they're 65.
Because they didn't have enough money to retire in the United States?
Yeah,
Huh.
or they didn't have enough money to live the lifestyle that they wanted.
Right. They thought they would be able to live a lifestyle. And, most of our guests don't just live on Social Security. There are a few, like the one in Seville. I mean, they are comfortable. They have a home in Carmel.
Yeah,
they have a home.
They're very comfortable.
They built a home in Seville.
I would say, comfortable to
Seville.
quite comfortable.
No, in
Yeah.
Seville they rent, but they rent the year round.
Right, they rent it year round. I'm sorry.
So let me ask you. So let's go back to that. You had mentioned it was interesting when you said that more of your guests that have been international they've done it. Cost is a huge variable because it's less expensive. What about folks that are, let's say, on the wealthier end of the spectrum? So the opposite. Where do you see those people going?
So I think we've had, I don't know that they're necessarily wealthier on that end. We have a guy who moved to Paris, okay? And he was living originally in, I believe, San Francisco.
Yes.
And so, one can argue that the prices aren't that different. But he went to Paris and he actually got work, but it wasn't something that he really needed to do. But he's living comfortably. He's been up there for how many years?
About 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. But
he's a permanent resident now.
he's a permanent resident.
Wow.
He got that because he became a citizen of Ireland, so
Okay.
it was easier for him.
Okay.
Because he was part of the EU.
Yes.
Yeah. And then we have a couple that moved to Sicily, all right? I would say, I don't know that they're comfortable, right?
Yeah.
They were definitely comfortable, and they decided to start a farm there. But it was an obstacle initially. To move to some of these places to become a citizen is very difficult to attain. The wife in that case had to find, going through ancestry and all that, she found a relative. Kind of like a long-lost relative, and ultimately, over a course of 10 years,
Yeah.
she
Her
became a
grandparents
citizen.
are from Italy, so were born in Italy. That's how she was able to get citizenship. But it did take her eight years. Yeah.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the spectrum, we have people who couldn't.
By the way, you just skipped over that. They left America and started a farm in Sicily. That's a kind of an
Yeah.
amazing story.
A little
Yeah.
farm.
What
but
kind
it's
of
really,
farm?
Well, they have
I think it's just a
chickens
family
and-
farm, but what they really do, they have a bed and breakfast.
Yeah,
Sounds
And-
pretty romantic to me. Bed
Yeah.
and breakfast and a chicken farm in Sicily, Italy.
Yes, they were
Pretty
real
cool.
characters.
no, they have a pony. They have, I think,
Yeah.
sheep. I don't.
Was
I
it
forget now.
expensive? Were they pretty wealthy to be able to do that, or is it affordable?
I think it was affordable.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say they were wealthy. They were certainly comfortable,
Yeah, they were comfortable.
but not wealthy. And they really, when they lived in the United States,
They had
I
a
think
B&B in
in
the United
Oregon, they had
States.
to make more money. They had a B&B in their house, and they rented that. So they made a lot of money in that because they had a popular B&B, and they hoped to be popular in Sicily.
Yeah.
What is the most, as we wrap up today, give me your, in let's call it 30 seconds or less, what is your most exciting, romantic, fascinating place or thing about a place that anyone is, that you've learned about so far?
Okay, Gene. 30-second. I will say Bulgaria was a shock to us because
It's a former Soviet country. I thought
Communist,
it was
yeah.
I'm sorry, for a communist country. I thought it was just a bleak place, and it turns out it's beautiful.
yeah, it's gorgeous, it's romantic, and it's a part of Europe that doesn't necessarily, come to mind for me. One of the places that I want to go to is London, Norway, Amsterdam, and we haven't done some of those places yet. But Bulgaria was an interesting thing.
When did you go? So you've been to Bulgaria.
No, we've never been.
just we had a guest from
We had
there.
a guest, and we did a lot of research on Bulgaria.
It seems to be all those
Yeah,
things.
it
We don't
seems to
know.
be all those things. Well, the couple gave us a really good flavor.
Yes,
And it wasn't on our map. It wasn't on our, radar.
that's for sure.
All right, so Gene, your turn.
What's the most? I don't know. What's the most? I would say. I don't know if this answers your question, but the most interesting thing I learned for me was the couple from who went to Seville. They decided that they were going to travel across, travel different places in Europe, and what they do is they travel without luggage. So they'll go 2 or 3 days to some place, say France, and they'll have just the clothes in their back, and she'll have a pocketbook, he'll have his wallet, and that's
romantic.
it. Well,
I don't
it's
think that's
romantic.
romantic.
Interesting. I said interesting too. That is
Interesting.
crazy.
So
It actually
they'll-
sounds
Okay.
crazy. These are
They'll-
crazy people.
They'll go to check in at the hotel, and the guy who see no luggage, he'll probably think, "Oh, they're having an affair or something."
Yeah.
And
A lot of good
and
marriage
that's-
stories in this.
Oh yeah.
But-
oh yeah.
But I thought that was so interesting. The Seville couple they were very interesting people. Yes.
How do they wash their underwear?
Well,
Well-
you buy certain, the store Ex Officio, and I'm not marketing for them at all.
Yeah, that's
I
the
think
one
they're
in
a
all
little
the
pricey.
airports.
They're in the airports,
And she said
they
that's-
easily dry.
That dries so quickly.
They buy ex officio stuff, wash their stuff at night, and it dries
Yes.
in the morning. So they sleep
Yes.
naked,
Yeah.
and
Yes,
everything
yes.
dries overnight.
Yeah, I don't
Yes.
want to know about the rest.
And she said it was funny because that's what everybody asked about the underwear.
It's the first
right.
thing I think of. Like, come on, you got to cheat. But they literally go in and they just, if they need to, they wash their clothes, and
Yes.
they dry out quickly. They're prepared for that. They have
Yeah,
a little
I
bit.
think it's more of a challenge. It's more of a
Yes.
challenge.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
But
Yeah.
but they've done it a number of times. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
I know,
Sounds,
I know.
It sounds very international spy. It's like a James Bond movie. He doesn't
Yeah.
notice that James Bond doesn't ever have luggage.
Oh, interesting.
Think about
Yeah.
that. He
That's
never
a-
checks
That's a
in
good
with
one.
No.
He never
Because
checks in with the
because
Samsonite.
like you, Wes, he has a lot of associates
He
and
has
assistants.
people.
Okay, he just shows up and says, "I'm ready to record."
Ready to go. Ready to go. Welcome to the Retire Sooner podcast.